Hello dear followers. So if you take a look at our playlist over here, in this we have day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 over here and day 6, but there's no day 1 in this one. In fact, for that we captured the video, but looks like it was misplaced and we are not able to find it, so I'm thinking of capturing it one more time and sharing it with you. So number one thing that I want to say out loud is whatever we are doing in this learning series, we are putting it in a GitHub repository, so you can always go to this repository. It's a public repository and you can go through each and every file over here and learn by yourself. Alright, so let's get started over here. So I'm going to bring the VS Code right now where I have cloned that repository and we have every file over here. So in the first video, which is not present at the moment in this playlist, we basically covered from first file to 9 files. So 01, 02, 03 like this. You can just go through these files. So let's start with the first one. In the first file, we talked about using the print statement and we executed hello world. So over here, right click, run this Python file in the terminal and you will see hello world over here. So that's what we have in the first one. Now let's talk about the conditions and variable declarations. So you don't have to, like any other programming languages, you don't have to write let or where. You simply set the name of the variable and assign a value to it. Over here you can see just like this x equals to, with this statement I'm saying that x is a variable name and we are going to assign value to it. Just like that, if you want to declare a float variable, okay, one more thing, not necessarily x, you can pick any name you want. Over here I'm saying that my float value over here, and in that I'm putting this 75 and 75.75 and so on and so forth. In the first name over here, let's say we have Sagar over here, and then over here I'm going to change this to Sagar. So with this statement number 3, we have declared a string variable. On the 5th line, you can see that I have written a piece of code which is a condition. So far, whatever we are writing, it's like executed from top to bottom. But let's say if you want to decide and execute on a condition basis. So let's say only if x equals 2 and the first name equals Sagar. So over here you can see that I've written or over here. So if you want to join multiple conditions, you can join it with and or. So and means both conditions should satisfy, and if you write over here or, it means either of the conditions should satisfy. So let's say in this case, one of the condition is getting satisfied over here, so it's going to print this value. Notice that over here I'm using a different syntax over here in order to print the value of the x. I'm using %d and then %, and then with that I'm supplying the x value over here. So with that, basically I'm trying to say over here is use the x value and format it and print it over here in the string. So this is the syntax for putting integer and float variables inside a string and then using it inside a print statement. Alright, so if I try to run this over here, you can see the output over here that x is holding one value and then it says 2. Well, okay, x is holding one value 2. Okay, holding a value which is 2, which is, I guess, my bad over here in the condition, right? So let's say if I change this to this, so in this case both of the conditions are failing. Now if I try to run this, you can see that it says this one over here. Alright, so it's basically conditions are failing, so else part is going to get executed. Over here we have used %d to print the integer value. Just like that, we use %f to print the float value. Sometimes we can use %d, sometimes we can use %i also, integer value. For that we can use %i or d integer values. For float, over here you can see that it says 75.8. So because we are specifying that I only need one fraction, so let's say if I want more, all I have to do is change this %.2f. Now if I run this over here, you can see that we are getting to up to 2 fractions. In this one, %s we have used for printing a string value, and whenever we are supplying multiple values, we use it like this. We put all the parameters in a bracket and then we supply it. But let's say if this is getting too complicated, what is %d, %i, %s? So in that case, you can simply use the formatted string. So for that, I'm going to use f and then double quotes over here. So this is called formatted string, in which, let's say, integer value over here, and for that I will use, let's say, x and then float value, and in that I would simply supply, let's say, my float value and string value over here, and in that I'm gonna say first name. So this is much more readable. You don't basically focus on %I and the sequence of the parameters at the end. You simply set the values in line. So now if I run this, we'll get the same output twice. Of course, not exactly the same, but this is one of the exercise for you. Like, how do I use two fraction in formatted string? So this is called formatted string over here, right? There are more basics that we need to cover in this video. Let's quickly go through it. So in this file, we understood that this is how we can declare a string, but Python accepts both single quoted string or double quoted string. One thing that you have to keep in mind that whenever you're using, let's say, single quote inside single quoted string, then you have to use the slash. And just like that, let's say over here, I want to put this inside quote, double quote, then I have to use slash, just like we have used slash over here. Okay, so make sure that if you're using double quote string and then you want to put double quote in the string, then you have to use the slash character, slash quote, slash double quote. So this is how you declare strings, and this is how you declare integer values. And over here you can see that we have done a basic operation addition over here, and then we are printing the value of the third variable, which is holding the summation of this two integer variables. So over here we just illustrated, or say we talked about adding two integers. How do we add two strings? So add two string is nothing but joining two strings or more. So over here we are joining three strings. So we have hello and then word and then space over here. So we are using hello variable over here, then space variable and then word variable. So with this we are joining these three strings. Let me try running this so that you get the idea about the output over here. Hello world, you can see it in the console. Now let's talk about more. So I believe this is what we've already discussed in this file. So I guess we are done with that part. So let's go to the next file, lists. So with the list, you can manage number of values. In this example, we are starting with empty list, and this is how you declare the empty list. And then you keep adding the values with the help of append function. It says integer list, but list is kind of a generic list. So I'm gonna change this to generic list over here. I think there is a way to do find and replace, but I did it manually. Anyway, so over here you can see that list is just a list. For this 5 statements, we are adding integer values. For line number 7, we are adding a string, and for line number 8, we have added a float value. So with that, I guess you have an idea now how does a list work. You can declare like this, or you can also declare a list like this as well. So let's say over here, Sagar, check for the labs. So with this, I believe now you get the idea that how do we declare a list and initialized with some initial values, right? How do we iterate through each item in the list? So for that, we have for loop which we can use, and for in loop that we can use. So for and each value in the list. So this loop is going to get each value and then execute some statements that you have written over here, and it's going to do it over and over for each element that we have in the list. Now in this piece of code, I have written some interesting code. How do you check the data type? Because in the list we have integer, in the list we have string, and in the list we have float as well. So how do we check the data type? So that's something we talk about now. So whenever we want to check the type, so supply the variable and within the type function and compare it with int. If it is matching, it would go inside over here. Just like that, we can check the type also for float, and we know that if it is not integer, if it is not float, then the data would be of string type. So here we have used different print statements inside condition. Let's try running this over here. So now you can see that for the integer values it's using bullet point, for the string value it is using hyphen, and for float values it's using asterisk sign. So with this we covered lists and how do we iterate through each value inside a list. For you, the exercise would be iterating through the list that is declared over here and not used. So in this example, I'm going to add a few more variables, let's say mh, or a few more values over here. So with that, you would have a proper loop. So try going through each element and then print a bullet list. So that's your exercise. In this video, we are going to cover, like I stated earlier, let's talk more basic operations. and then after that we will cover string operations and conditions as well, and after that we'll cover loops, and that would be the agenda for the video. So let's talk about the operations. So over here you can see that we are doing some basic math operations on set of numbers. So this is how we do it. You can do addition, multiplication, division. With modulo sign you get a remainder. So in this example we would get 2 value, and whenever you want to, let's say 7 power 2, so you put 2 asterisk signs, and with that you get the value over there, 7 power 2 which is 49, and 2 power 3 which is 8. So if you use multiplication sign with a string, it's going to repeat the string. So let's say in this example it's going to, let's say now if I say 3, so it's going to repeat the same string for 3 times. So let's try running this and then I can explain it to you. So you can see in this example we are seeing 3 times Aditya. Now if we do addition to 2 different numbers, then we get the addition of those 2 numbers. If we do addition to 2 different strings, we get a string which is joined. And if we do multiplication with a given number, in that case we get string which is repeated. Now I know you might be wondering, what if I multiply a string with another string? So that's something that you have to explore. Go ahead and give it a try and see what you get in the output. Next, what would happen if I join, or not join, basically use the addition operator to 2 different lists? So in that case it's going to join 2 different lists into one, okay, which we've already seen over here in the output. So first it's printing 2 4 6 8 and then 1 3 5 7. That's the value of all list. The next thing is multiplication to a given list. So in this example we are doing multiplication with odd list, and in that you can see the output. As expected, it's going to repeat, just like in the list it repeated Aditya over here 3 times. In this example it's going to repeat the array 3 times. What else? The formatted string I think we've already covered in this example. So now let's jump to the next 5 string operations. In string operations, number 1 operation that we usually do is like, what is the length of the string? So for that we have inbuilt function called len. With that you can find the length of a string. So if I try running this in the terminal, you can see that we're getting 12 over here. Now if I change this string to, let's say hello world, goes here, and now if I try running this, the length of the string would be slightly different, and of course we are getting the error. So with that you can see that we are getting error over here because it's trying to find the index of r, which is not in this string. So let's change the string back to, let's say whatever it was. It's, I know, slightly different. So if I try running this example, we'll get a different output. So r index of r is 0, that's why it is printing 0. So note that indexes start from 0 and goes forward, 0 1 2 3 4 5 6. How many times the a is repeated in this string? So you can see it's 1 2 and 3. I know you may say that it is 4 times over here, but it is case sensitive, so that's why it's going to say 3 times. If you want to splice the string, so slice the string. For slicing the string, this is how you should specify, like start index and end index. So it's gonna end before the value that you have specified. So for example, in this one, if we write 3 and 7, so it's going to start with, this is 0, then 1 2 3. So it's going to start with 3, then this is 4th, 5th, 6th. So it's going to stop over here, and that's why in the console output you see a space an, because that's the selection that we have done by specifying 3 to 7 over here. And how do you reverse a string? To reverse a string, all you have to do is, there's no starting point, there's no ending point, just traverse in reverse. So with that you specify that I want to reverse a string, and that's why in the output you are looking at the string which is reversed. Of course there are other ways to reverse a string as well, but this is one of the fancy way to do it. Now let's talk about more string operations. So far we have covered length and index and count and slicing the string. Now in this one we're going to cover uppercase. Uppercase is basically going to change the string to the uppercase. Lowercase is all lower. At line number 13 you can see it gives us true or false, basically if it is matching a given condition or not. The condition here is like, is it starting with hello? Is it ending with world? Yes or no? You will get the answer. It's ending with world, it is ending with world, but if you look carefully, W isn't capital, that's number one, and it is ending with exclamation sign. So if I change this to exclamation sign and to lower W, now it will say true. So if I run this, you will see true, but if I undo it, it's gonna say false in the output. So uppercase, lowercase, starts with, ends with, and split. So let's say if you have more words and if you want to split all of them, Decoder Labs over here. So if you want to split them with the space, you just specify the separator with that, it's going to split into different strings. Now you have a list of strings separated with the space character. So this is how you split a given string. So we have covered more basics on string operations. Now let's talk about conditions. Conditions we have covered already, and or in file 02. Over here we will take a look at one more type of condition. So like I stated, and or we've already covered. There is one more type, in operator. So if name is inside the list, if condition is true, it's going over here. So in the conditions, so far we have compared two different, let's say, string values, two different integer values, and we have also give me 1 second. Yeah, we have also compared the data type as well in this file. So with that, now you know different types of conditions which you can use and create conditional code. Loops are similar to all other loops that you use in other programming